Good morning. Let's start over again. Take a deep breath, would you? Let it go. Let's do that together again. Breathe in. Let go. One more of those together. Breathe in. Let go. And so, this month we are exploring, the theme of the month is the quality of vulnerability. Hooray. This year, each month we're exploring a different quality we want to awaken, to activate, to call in to ourselves individually and for our community. So we started off with just looking at rooting into the deepest truth. God is all that there is. And then from that place, we spent February talking about curiosity, and then last month all about authenticity, which leads us to this month's conversation, vulnerability, which I know some of us don't love, because vulnerability is this word that we have a lot of associations with, right? And to be vulnerable, we think of as being unsafe, being open to danger, being open to the potential of being hurt, right? And we talked last week about, in the animal kingdom, if you're vulnerable, it means that you could potentially get eaten. And so we've kind of taken that and we've said, okay, there's a certain vulnerability to vulnerability, right? And I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. Raise your hand if you know who Brene Brown is. Yeah. I think we're going to call her the vulnerability guru. And I sent out a talk in the e-news this week. Hopefully some of you saw the Brene Brown TED Talk that we sent out. But one of the things that I love about Brene Brown is that she brings new context to what vulnerability means to us, right? And I was listening to her talk this week and reading some of her work, and the thing that I found amazing is that she talks about vulnerability as being an element of courage, right? Not about being unsafe, not about opening up to danger. Vulnerability is about being courageous. And she says that the root word of courage, originally the root, means full-heartedness. So people who are vulnerable, people who are creative, live from a full heart. Full-hearted people are courageous, right? Well, what does that even mean? Right? And I love this idea of being full-hearted, of being vulnerable, of being courageous, which really is all about letting what's inside of us be seen by ourselves, by people around us, and by our community. And that when we're willing to be seen, when we're willing to put ourselves out there, when we're willing to share what's happening inside of us, we open ourselves up to that vulnerable place. Because what if you don't like what you see? What if I'm ashamed of what it is that you don't know about me, so I keep it secret? But what happens is when we hold stuff inside of us, when we keep things in the dark, those things grow in the dark, right? And if there's parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of, or parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to see, or parts of ourselves that we're not willing to accept, and we try to hide them, we try to keep them locked up, those are the things that are going to eat at us from the inside. And Brene Brown says that vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity. And I said, ooh, there's something there, right? Because when you think about creativity, oftentimes our minds go to art, right? And think about some of the greatest art you've ever experienced in the world. What is it but an outpouring of something from within someone? Whether it's their pain, their love, their curiosity, whatever it is, that which is inside of us, when we unleash it, that's where our creativity comes from, right? The best music, the best art, the best of human gifting to the world comes from unleashing that which is inside of us and letting it be seen, letting it be heard, letting it be freed into the world to allow the truth of who we are to shine in ways that I think we're truly meant to shine. And when we're unwilling to share the truth of who we are, we lock that beauty inside of us, right? And in order to be the true, authentic versions of who we are meant to be, in order to build real community, we have to be willing to be seen and be willing to see wholeheartedly the people who we meet. Because vulnerability is also a lot about connection. And I'm pretty sure the greatest human need is for connection. And in order to develop real connection, we have to let people in. And in order to let people in, guess what? We have to be vulnerable, right? When we fall in love with someone, it's because there's a mutual seeing. We're willing to see into the other, allow the other to see into us. And when we are engaged in that process, love awakens, connection awakens. Sometimes we might even see ourselves in the other. We might even realize that we're not alone in the pain or the hurt or the anger or whatever it is that we hold inside of us. Maybe there's someone else who has a similar experience. But if I'm not willing to open it up, if I'm not willing to show you, if I'm not willing to let you see it, I'll probably think I'm in it by myself. And I guarantee you, none of us are actually alone. There are people around you who are going through what you're going through. There are people around you who are willing to see you for the truth of who you are. And sometimes we have to show up and say to each other what's on our heart, what we're hurting through, what our insecurities are. Because when we share that, that's how we allow the people around us to hold us. If I never tell you that I'm hurting, if I never tell you that I'm sad, if I never tell you that there's something going on inside of me that I'm struggling with, you probably just think I'm fine. Right? And then there's no mutual seeing. There's no willingness to be held in what we're experiencing. And if we truly want to build authentic community, if we truly want to find connection with each other, if we truly want to see the truth of who we are, then we have to be willing to let it out and let it be seen, which might be a big job. It's a weird, wild, scary world out there. And I think that in a big way, most people's unwillingness to be vulnerable is out of a fear of being hurt. And that fear of being hurt comes from a belief that we're not safe. And that's where I think the power of spiritual community comes in. Because there may be places out there that don't feel safe to you. But my continuous invitation to this community is, can we be a place where we can come together and practice these ideas with each other? Because I believe that this place might be a few degrees safer than what you find in your family or your workplace or out there somewhere else. So there's a place where you can practice showing up, and when someone asks you, how are you doing? You say, oh my God, I'm hurting. I'm in pain. I didn't want to show up today, but I'm here anyways. And then there's an opportunity to allow yourself to be seen in the truth of what you're experiencing and not some positive projection that you're trying to give the people around you. Let us be a community that is about authenticity, not stuck on positivity. Because the deepest practice we can engage in is to be in that deep, authentic, mutual seeing of the other. And that means being willing to sit with each other in each other's pain, to be willing to sit with each other in our grief, to be willing to sit with each other in our anger and sadness, but also be willing to sit with each other in our joy, our love, our celebration, and all of the good that is happening. But to embrace the fullness that is the human experience, right? If each one of us truly is the power and the presence of the infinite life of the universe, and we've squeezed ourselves into these little human bodies, we come here for the full breadth of the human experience. We come here to experience everything from ecstasy to pain. And in that contrast, we grow. In that contrast, we learn about ourselves. In that contrast, we start to awaken the presence of love that is the truth of who we are, and then it starts to shine through our eyes, and we get to see it reflecting back in the other. It's the experience of being human that awakens us to the truth of who we are. And I believe that some of the spiritualities that many of us have been part of have for a long time have told us we just have to be positive, we just have to put on the best face, we just have to be shiny and beautiful all the time. But when we do that, we discount half of our experience. There is so much here in life for us, and when we're willing to meet it and greet it, it will turn us into who we're meant to be. I had an experience a number of years ago where someone in my life had hurt me in a way that was very difficult. And I decided within myself that I was going to make a commitment to love. Beyond the hurt, beyond the betrayal, beyond the pain, I was going to make a commitment to love. And I got hurt a few more times in the process of that. But because I was willing to be vulnerable, to show up in this situation with this person, and allow myself to show up again and again with my commitment to love, I did get hurt a couple times over and over and over again. But the other thing that happened is that because I made this commitment to show up, I noticed that the person who was responding to the hurt was different than how that person might have shown up before. And I had this reflection recently after moving through that experience and being on the other side of it, that I have fallen in love with who I am because I was willing to show up for that person in that moment and love through the pain. It grew something inside of me. And I learned something about love that I could have never learned any other way. What it truly means to love unconditionally. What it truly means to love beyond circumstance. What it truly means to love through pain. And now I find that there's this love inside of me that feels uncontainable. That feels big enough to look to the deeper issues of the world, to look deeper into myself, to look deeper into those around me, and to look for that love, to look for how can I show up in that love in a bigger way. But it took a willingness to be vulnerable, to step into a space where I knew I might get hurt if I continue to love in this way. And that happened. But because of how I chose to show up, and because I was willing to search through my own vulnerability and reactions and processes and experiences, it awakened something in me. And that's the invitation I want for all of us to explore as we move through this conversation about vulnerability, is who could I become if I was truly willing to open myself up and allow the something more to reveal itself to me through my experiences. If we're willing to be vulnerable, we can unlock the greater capacities that live inside of us. It is the gateway to our something more. And so, let each one of us learn how to roll away the stone and step out into the light and ascend into who we're meant to be. Take a deep breath. Let it go. And so as we breathe together, let us just drop into this moment of awareness, where first and foremost, above all things, we just claim one thing. God is all that there is. One power, one presence, one life force, one love force that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe. Every star, every planet, every galaxy, every person, every experience, everything that is unfolding anywhere is all part of that one thing. I call it God. But indeed, that is our consciousness. It is our life force. It is the truth of who we are. And so let each one of us remember that we are a place where the power and the presence and the light of the possible shines into the world. and that it is our job to live into our authenticity, to be a place where truth, where love shows up. And in order to do that, we have to let that love out of ourselves. We have to let that truth into the world, which means we have to speak our truth. It means we have to open our hearts. It means we have to be willing to be vulnerable, to let the love in and let the love out. Let us not block the flow of love. Let us learn to open and let it move through us. Let it grow us. Let it evolve us into who we are meant to be. And so this day I just speak a word of gratitude for this container that we call spiritual community, for this group of individuals who are so deeply committed to themselves, to their spiritual growth, to the awakening. Let us commit to be here for each other and support the process of awakening as we lift each other up. And so I am just grateful. And I remind all of us that there is indeed a power for good in this universe that is so much greater than we are. And yet it is who we are. It flows through us, moves through us, lifts us up. And so I claim all of this as being good and very good. And I let it be, and so it is.